Will today's drop satisfy the dump gods, or in fact, are we in store for another dirty mess? Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Stephanie Sticky Trousers, and today was a day that had a massive dumpage. It wasn't even that big, but guys, we have a lot to be jumping into in this webisode as Bitcoin did one of our scenarios that we talked about literal moments before we had this move. But ultimately, yeah, guys, you notice this red 50 moving average here on the 6-hour chart. Very, very rarely over the past few weeks have we actually come down to this. And that also is right around, this is right around the $34,000 level for Bitcoin. So guys, the question now is this drop going to be enough to propel Bitcoin for the next few days and break the all-time highs of roughly about 42 almost thousand US dollars? Or in fact, is this a very clear reversal trend, right? The two big scenarios are, we're gonna basically be inching our way up to break another all-time high over most likely the next few days, or is this the beginning of a change in the trend? So if you guys love gainers and are ready for some new all-time highs, make sure to hit that like, subscribe, turn on those post notifications, and without any further ado, let's jump on in. Talk about a sticky situation, guys. What an absolute riot we endured earlier today. But in fact, if we take a look at this, this is literally identical to another move that we saw just days ago that we were comparing to a potential scenario that we could get today. And in fact, that's literally exactly what we did. So if we go here to this 6-hour chart, this was probably the most key time frame we were looking at today. And we basically almost got an exact similar size percentage drop today that we did back on January 3rd, literally exactly a week ago, right around 15%. Today's drop was right around about 16, and the drop we had about a week ago was around 18%. You see that here in the chart. And guys, one of the key things that we really have to note here on these smaller time frames, because technical analysis is always evolving and always changing, but one thing that we notice right now is we're exactly at our 21 moving average here on this 6-hour chart, which is what we talked about as we were below both the 4-hour and 1 hour, but we were talking about this 6-hour if we were going to be able to maintain this or if we were going to break below it. Now clearly we have broken below it. We went all the way down to about like 34,000 on some of these charts. I believe this one was about 34,000. For some reason this one only went to about 35, but pretty big dumpage. But the question remains, is this the end of this trend, or are we going to continue up here? So one of the first things we want to note here as well, this is going to be one of the deciding factors that you can watch in the very short term that'll be relevant for a few hours here, is that are we going to have Bitcoin kind of creep up to this 39.5, basically get above 39,000 US dollars in the short term and kind of reclaim this 21 moving average here on the 1-hour chart and get back above it? Because that's one of the key things we have to do in the very, very immediate future, right? That's one of the main things we have to do is kind of break back above 39,000. Specifically, we do not want to stay below about 38,700-ish. So the lower half of 38,000, we really don't want to stay below, because again, that's going to bring some of these moving averages more down, just lower, and it's going to make it harder for Bitcoin in the short term to reclaim some gainage here. But one of the things you see as well, we're also below the 4-hour still. Getting back above that, we would need to go almost $2,000 higher than where we currently are, around 38,000 US dollars. On the 6-hour chart, this is okay. So within the last 1 minute, we're actually now below this moving average, which again is roughly about 38,400, 38,500. Currently now we're about 38,000 even, okay? Price is actually kind of fluctuating a lot as I'm recording this. On the daily chart, one of the things you notice as well, the key area where we bounced is this 10-month channel that we have been talking about for almost 10 months now. You can see this came all the way down to the very top line of our channel here, and this will be a really, really interesting thing to see. So over the next few days, today we want to get a daily close, which we're going to be getting this actually in a few minutes. So by the time this gets uploaded, we will get this close. Basically, as long as we get a close above 36,000 US dollars, it'll be above that. So unless Bitcoin drops about $2,000 in the next 10 minutes, in the next 10, 20 minutes, then we're gonna stay above this. But tomorrow, again, this is an ascending line, so by tomorrow, we basically would have to maintain above like 37,000 US dollars, which we're really close to. We just dipped into $37,000 as I was just saying that. So basically, the identical pattern that we want to see is basically exactly what we saw back here on January 4th, where we had a pretty big wick go very substantially below this line and go back very deep, substantially deep into this EMA ribbon, but get a daily close above this current trend line, which again is above 36,000 if we would get a close here, and then tomorrow would be like roughly 37,000, and kind of continue in reverse here. Or this could be a topping out point. And one of the reasons I want to say that, so if we actually pull out just the fib retrace for the last, from the high of 2017 to the low of that market, this level that we bounced off of, right around 42,000, is a very key fib level, 1.414 here. And we actually almost came down all the way to this next fib level, which is actually right around like 32,000. We only went down to about 34, depending on how you draw it, but we did get a pretty big retracement down to right about here. So we almost came all the way down to it. Now, technically, that could be enough to fill it. And again, we can't speak too soon because this we have to wait for some more closes, I think, before we get any confidence in this short-term move. But not looking bad, this is very possible. And the one thing that I really want to add on to this is probably the biggest statement of all. Depending on what happens over the next 24-48 hours, it's going to be very critical, because if we do break all-time high of about 42,000, whether that takes literally a few hours or like a few days, or whether it takes longer, whether it takes a week or so and we actually do have more of a pullback, okay, because those are the two scenarios. Either we continue pulling back, or we actually have already found our bottom locally right now and we're going to go higher. One scenario I think we need to pay attention to is that if we do break 42,000 again, in the short term, the likelihood of us actually setting a blow off top in the short term, because if we continue bouncing here and we end up breaking 42,000, let's say we run up to 45,000, something like that. Guys, I think that really sets the stage for a blow off top where we could see ourselves maybe even come back down to this $30,000 level over the next week and try to regain a little momentum for Bitcoin before we continue heading higher, because the next giant leg level up is right about exactly 60,000 US dollars. It's the next big key fib level, 1.618. And really at this point, the only levels that we really have to look forward to in a blue sky breakout are these fib levels. These are like some of the only reliable levels that we're looking at. For example, right, when we broke all-time high right about here, this was about 4 weeks where we traded sideways. This was a key level. If we actually take it to the daily chart, you can see how it interacted here. You can see this previous level, just basically the 1.272, you can see we basically went straight up. And then this is where we found a few days of consolidation. We went extremely below it, but you can see exactly where we had this close. We wicked really far below to 27,000, but we closed right at 32, which is that key fib level. Same thing here, okay? You see we didn't, after we broke above this, we actually only had daily closes above this fib level. Same thing here. We haven't had any daily closes above this fib level, which is a little over 41,000 here. So this is kind of a decisive moment, because this is going to dictate whether or not we kind of, what I personally think would be ultimately find support around 30,000. I don't think we're necessarily going to go any lower than that. And if we do, it would be more of a wick like this. So that's one thing I'm looking for. But ultimately, what I think is going to happen is we're going to have another scenario like this, where we do end up, breaking above it. Let me even just, we could draw it something like this. And continue higher here and head up to this next fib level of about 60,000 US dollars. So there is a scenario where we have another massive explosion soon. But I personally think that if this happens too soon, that this is going to be a blow off top, and we're going to have to spend more time than we want to consolidating or dropping potentially lower than we want to. So ultimately, what we see here shape up over the next few days, where tomorrow is a new week. We're about to see what the DXY does. This will be very critical. In fact, the DXY, as of right now, is above the 21-day moving average. So this is very important to see, because if we start seeing the DXY make a resurgence here, guys, that is a huge telltale sign, in my opinion, that it's very likely that we could end up trying to, we could spend a few days actually right around this level, cementing 30,000 as support. And on a macro chart, that makes a lot of sense to me, that, we blow past 20,000 US dollars, we double it to 40,000 US dollars. And then if there would be any time where we'd have a cool down, maybe let's say 1 to 2 weeks cooling down around 30,000, ultimately finding a bottom at 30, I think that would be beautiful and perfect in terms of Bitcoin structure over the next few weeks to end out January. before absolutely shattering 42,000 and making a moonshot towards 60,000. But again, that perfect scenario that I just talked about, if this happens with the DXY, where the DXY actually gets a little bit of room for gains after dropping consistently for weeks and weeks, I mean, it really depends here. It really depends if the DXY is going to break above this 21-day moving average as it currently is, but then hold it for support. I personally expect that, again, the trend for the DXY, I personally think is still going to be ultimately very much to the downside on a weekly time frame and especially a monthly time frame. Okay, so let's skip ahead a few months. I don't think we're going to do this. If we skip ahead a few months, I think ultimately this is going to be the trajectory at best. Best case for the DXY could be sharper, okay? Could be sharper down, but the one scenario that I could be wrong, but I just don't think is going to play out is exactly what played out back in 2018, where, well, basically that wedge that everyone has been talking about. So, you see this kind of like wedge here like this that end up breaking up. I don't think we're going to see that same exact scenario. I don't think things like that would just repeat as easily, and also we didn't have the Fed agreeing to basically print unlimited money back then, so I see no reason why this would repeat exactly like this, and I think the only reason people think that is because they look similar. So I don't think we can base the TA just on the fact that it looks like a time we saw this happen before. Okay, the Fed's printing funny money, and again, I mean, ultimately I think that means the DXY is going to go down, which ultimately means Bitcoin's going to go up. But in the very, very short term, if the DXY does have kind of like a dead bounce right here, then we could see that scenario we talked about play out, where we might trade in this range for a little bit. Ultimately, within that area, that time where we're trading here, we might find support around 31, 30, 32,000 US dollars before blasting, breaking 41, 42,000 and going up to 60,000 US dollars. Which could all happen before the month of January ends. We still have a pretty lengthy amount of time in January. And the other thing as well, just basically holding this for support. We want to see Bitcoin do that. If it would fail, you can see that we would come down to this next leg here, which again would not even be too unheard of in terms of the structure of this chart. Say we come down here, and again, we could hold right at exactly 30,000. That's exactly what this level is. So ultimately, if the worst case pullback scenario would come for Bitcoin, that is what I'm looking at. Worst case scenario pullback for Bitcoin is holding around 30,000. But again, guys, Bitcoin is still looking pretty strong, so there's no reason to assume that that's what we're going to do just yet. I'm just saying that that's worst case scenario if the DXY gets a bounce in the short term and if Bitcoin continues to fall here and doesn't hold. So basically, to sum it up, worst case scenario, I think we're going to trade between 32 and 38,000 US dollars over the next week before blasting up to roughly, I think a pretty big blast would come after that. Maybe it would be incrementally, but 45, 50, 55, and then 60,000 ultimately is the macro target up here. And then keep in mind, after 60,000, again, this is probably at least 1, 2, 3 months away. But we're talking about $120,000 Bitcoin. Earliest maybe in the first quarter of 2021, but we really have to see how Bitcoin reacts at the current levels and see how much buying pressure there is. So guys, make sure to hit that like, subscribe, turn on post notifications. All comments enter you for a ledger, equivalent BTC or access to T4. And as well, for anybody interested in trading, make sure to take advantage of the Bybit deposit bonuses below, up to $200 for trading, experienced traders only, and also if you want to support the channel.